Hey there, and welcome to another episode of Interama. Today, even though the episode might seem a little bit shorter than usual, we're actually going to be making quite a bit of progress, and we're going to continue the development of the international sector of the map. To be honest, I thought we were going to, spend only like 2-3 episodes working on that whole area. But it seems like it requires a little bit more time. So it's going to take a little bit longer than that, which is fine. But I do want to start diversifying into other areas of the park so that, we have a bit of a variety of things and builds going on. But in the time lapse that's just starting in a few seconds, you're going to see that we're at least putting down some of the paths in different sectors of the map as well. And I mainly did this for, just to get an idea on how big on how large the scale of things would be. And we're starting things off by extending one of these corner paths that leaps from the main plaza. And for the most part, what I wanted to do there is to sort of create a limit for the international sector, because we're going to be doing some terraforming in just a few moments, and obviously we're going to be doing some landscaping as well. There's going to be a lot of landscaping on this one. But at the same time, I also wanted to start measuring the path that will lead to the sort of the main focal point of this whole park, which would be the space tower, which it's a huge tower that we'll have to build in the middle of the park. We're a few episodes away from that, but just wanted to sort of lay down the foundations for the location of such a tower. And as you can see here, I'm kind of like surrounding the international sector with paths. They're just there for, just to see where things would go. They wouldn't necessarily look that way. I'm probably going to be changing some of the textures, adding the curves and things like that, and obviously adding decorations pretty much throughout. So it's definitely quite a bit of a process, but I did try to spend some time, decorating a few of these paths. So I went ahead and duplicated these planters that we had here with the Scaviola, is that the name of that bush that grows in between the hedges? You know what I'm talking about. But basically just expanding this whole area, just sort of following the same design aesthetic, and it's just as easy as duplicating the element over and over again. I struggle a lot getting paths to work the way I want them to. This is just the most annoying thing from this game is the path work, unfortunately. I'm definitely getting better at it, but it definitely takes quite a bit of time to get, if you want to be very precise with the type of path that you want, it's really, really finicky. So, hopefully I'll get better during as I create more areas of the park, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Now here, I use the height of the terrain that we have right next to the train tracks, because I wanted to have a bit of a little hill behind the food court and the bathroom and the I think, what else do we have? Oh, we have like a nursery, not a nursery, but like an infirmary, or like the doctor's office or whatever that is. In the park in real life, there is actually a big hill. I mean, not a big hill, but like definitely a height difference in the terrain right before or right behind the food court. So I kind of wanted to replicate that as well. And it definitely adds a lot to the park. Terraforming, again, it's also something that's not quite easy to do if you want to be precise, which is kind of unfortunate, because I wanted to, getting the rolling hills like very smooth in terms of sloping. It's really tricky because the smooth tool doesn't really smooth things out all that much. So there's quite a bit of manual work involved. And right here, I'm just using some of the same aesthetic that I chose for the main path that leads to the entrance of the park, which is basically these little pine trees surrounded by a cluster of bushes. And this time around, I went ahead and group them into a building so that it's easier to duplicate them around. And obviously creating versions with bushes and versions without the pine trees, just so they have a bit of a variety of things. And again, I'm going for my usual cluster of vegetation. Obviously, I'm not going to fill that whole area because it doesn't really make that much sense to do it. And just doing it like that, it almost like generates a bit of a texture kind of aesthetic to it that I think looks much better. And I'm actually trying the same design here with the flowers. I created this cluster of flowers that I pretty much duplicated and placed in multiple areas of the park, even on that main path, just to add a bit more detail, because it looked a little bit plain. But I also didn't want to like completely overdo it, because it in the park in real life, you don't actually see that many things in areas like that. So I try to keep it, to some degree true to the original design, but not be absolutely limited by it. So I'm definitely adding my own touches here and there. This hill in real life is actually pretty plain. It only has like one or two trees, and then the rest is just grass. And I don't think that looks great in the game, so I just decided to add a few more trees and create a bit of a tiny forest that, I don't know, just thought it looked much nicer. And here, this is actually something completely new and created by me. I noticed that this spot could be a great, like an observation point to take photos or just look at the rest of the park, because it's like elevated a little bit. Just decided to put some benches. And one of these, you're going to see it in a moment, I decided to put one of these, I don't know what they're called. The one, yeah, that thing. Man, I really wish I knew the name of that. It's too tiny on my previous screen right now, so I can't really even read it. But it's basically like a gathering point. So people will go out of their way to look at this thing. It almost behaves like a ride or like a facility. And it actually kind of works. So I've seen some people, when I started the simulation, I've seen some people actually go all the way up there, even though they're obviously going to prefer going to rides or to, foot stalls or things like that. But every once in a while, you do see someone climb up this little path that zigzags alongside the hill. And obviously, by the way, I'm moving the trees out of the way, because if you want to take photos, you really don't want to block that view, huh? And just reutilizing some of these elements that I've been using pretty much throughout the park to highlight, entrances. So in this case, we have the two pillars with the two lights, and this wooden railing. It's kind of like the signature sort of style for many things around the park. So I, try to use them as much as I can in areas that, that kind of make sense. So pretty happy with how this whole little thing came out. I wasn't planning on doing it. I just saw the opportunity and went for it. So one thing I did realize is that I wanted to have some sort of separation between the food court and that path. So I just decided to clone, these clusters of bushes, and I thought that was a nice divider between the different areas. I also, just a second ago, I don't know if you noticed, but I used the brush tool to create like a different shade of grass on that uphill climb, as well as using the dry grass brush. The dry brush on the edges of these clusters of trees and bushes. And it just, I don't know, for some reason it makes things blend in a lot more. It just looks much nicer that way. Obviously adding a few rock textures as well. But for the most part, you'll notice that on every single cluster of trees and bushes and things, or vegetation in general, I tend to go for that dry grass texture, and it just makes things look that much nicer. So I highly recommend you try that in your own parks. And over here, just wanted to have some sort of an entrance. Not an entrance necessarily, actually, but more like an area where people could just sit and look at the nature part of this sector of the park. I tried multiple combinations of benches and dustbins and things like that, so I ended up going for that route. And obviously, since this whole area of the park was pretty dark, I decided to put some of these modern lamps. Actually, I'm pretty sure I'm going to use only or strictly those throughout the park. We're actually going to have different light fixtures of different kinds in other areas, but on the main path, we're just going to go with the default style, which I think works great. Another thing that we were missing is some lights here on the food court, so I went ahead and put some of these colored spotlights that look amazing, and obviously we're using the themed orange or gold and pink colors just to sort of tint everything in those colors, and it actually thought it came out great, especially this area right here, which was pretty dark before I started putting down lights. All of these tables are like properly highlighted now, and these like super colorful lights come from the building itself. They even look really nice during the daytime. You're gonna see it at the end of the video in the cinematics. But I was really happy with how it came out, and yeah, I'm actually not sure if the park would be open, during the night. Maybe these lights are only meant for, I guess when it, after sunset, people are still like roaming around the park. But I think this park was never open that late, so I still do want to have lights in the park. Just it looks nice. It makes for nice cinematics, even though people are still walking around. But as you can see here, I'm using a different type of light for that little path, and you're gonna see me do that in just a few minutes at the entrance of the train tracks, because we're actually gonna start improving that a little bit. And I went ahead and moved one of these rides, one of the flat rides that we just put as a placeholder there, and I decided to raise it against elevate the terrain a bit and put it on top, and then have the path. I wasn't sure, I didn't know that I was recording this whole segment with me not doing anything, so I do apologize for that. But what I was saying is I wanted to sort of have a bit of a zigzag path that leads into the ride that was somewhat elevated. This took me quite a bit of time to get it right, but I'm pretty happy with the final result. You're going to see in a moment. And this is probably a good time to segue into some news regarding Planet Coaster. You see, last week there was this event called PAX East, and Frontier Development was there, and they announced the 1.2 version of Planet Coaster, which includes multiple things. But the one I'm the most interested in is the addition of go-karts. You see this whole area of the map, that whole empty space that you see right next to this flat ride, in real life, in the real park, there was a go-karts track there. So when I saw that announcement, I was like, yes, that's awesome. Because I was actually thinking of faking it, just doing like a still ride, with like a fake track. But now that this feature is coming out, it's actually going to be perfect. And in fact, it's really well done, because it has its own pathfinding and proper AI. So it's not just like randomly simulated. It's like the real thing. So I'm really looking forward to that. Apparently a 1.2 is coming out at some point in April, so I think it will be just in time for us to maybe wrap up this sector of the map. Hopefully we can get it all done by the time that feature comes out. There were a few other announcements that are going to be, a few other things that are going to be included in the update. I can't remember exactly all of them. I know that there's going to be a new set of flat rides that we're obviously probably going to be using, as well as I know there's like a new security guard type of character, and a few other things as well. So if you're interested, I'm going to try to link in the description of the live stream where they announced it. I want to try to link it specifically to the time code where they presented the go-karts, so you don't have to sit through the whole time lapse, the whole live stream. But in case you do, you can just watch it. It's all the same link. That's the magic of the internet right there. But going back to this belt right here, I decided to elevate this right, like I said, and I went for like this, brick structure that kind of like zigzags for the entrance path and the exit path, and I thought it looked kind of nice. On top of that, I also went for these concrete flooring tiles that are, this really boring concrete texture, but I actually kind of love it because it's the sort of the perfect transition between the different textures, specifically the one at the base of the ride, which in this case, after, in between cuts, it now suddenly matches the entrance queue. And that's actually something worth pointing out. And I'm going to try to sort of standardize all of the entrance queues and the exit paths using the same textures. For the entrance queues, I want to be using this texture that you see on the screen right now. It's a plain old boring concrete texture. And I want also, flat rides specifically to have that as their base texture. And the exit paths will be, the yellowish sandstone that you see. Well, you were able to see it if you were quick, just on the bottom of the screen. And here, when I'm creating the entrance and exits for the train station, I started using that texture, the tiles, but I'm just going to change it in a few seconds, trust me. It's not going to end up looking like that. And talking about this train station, by the way, I just decided to make the little path towards, towards the where the train is waiting a little bit nicer, and it's definitely heavily landscaped. So I went ahead and just used the same aesthetic that I was using before with these hedges, and just trying to contour it and rotate the different pieces multiple times so that you get like a seamless kind of a hedge that sort of follows the curves of the these paths. And at the end, I thought it looked actually pretty great. This is not what it looks like in real life. Actually, in the train station in real life, it's just like a straight line of path, which is not that appealing. And actually, that brings me to something that I needed to mention, because I did this after I already pre-recorded half of this episode. So you may have noticed that I included a few clips from Google Earth during this episode, and that's a first. And I'm gonna try to be doing that more often, because I keep talking about how things in real life look, but I've been getting a lot of comments from you saying that it would be nice if I put some of the reference photos that I keep always talking about. So I figured it would be even better if I just go ahead and give you a 3D perspective from Google Earth. That way you can see how the whole place looks like. I'm going to try to do that more often. Maybe at the beginning of the episode, show you, hey, we're going to be building so-and-so part of the, this park. So this is what it looks like in real life. And then we can compare it to the version that I end up actually building. So I thought that was actually kind of an interesting addition, and let me know in the comments what you think. I'm also going to try to, include a few photos here and there that would help further illustrate what I'm trying to do. Obviously, all these parts I'm kind of like winging it, specifically these areas that are not highly detailed, at least in the Google Maps version of the park. And there's actually no footage or anything from people who have taken photos, because this is sort of like the maintenance kind of part. I mean, sorry, it's not really the maintenance part of things, but this train, I don't know when it was the last time that it actually run, so I couldn't find any footage of people actually riding this train, which would have been actually pretty interesting. I keep saying the word actually, so I should probably stop doing that. Over here, by the way, I'm just creating a really simple station. I wanted to add this glass roof. I know it's a little bit too modern compared to the rest of the park, but I thought it was pretty, fitting, and it kind of matched the overall aesthetic. So I just went ahead, and since we have multiple buildings sort of defining the edges of the train station, I had to, do some duplication. In fact, to cover some of these gaps, I duplicated and kind of overlapped the different roofs amongst each other, and they actually looked kind of nice. You barely can tell the difference if they're, overlaid or not. Finally, this is important, I'm adding more staff to the park, and this is also worth noting. You do want to increase the salary of these people, because otherwise they will quit. I realized that I was just leaving everything by default, and then all of a sudden I had no one working the information kiosk at the entrance of the map. But yeah, that's it for this episode. I'm running out of time, and I hope that you enjoyed. If you did, please consider giving this video a huge thumbs up. That's very much appreciated and it helps a lot. And if you're new to the channel, I want to encourage you to go click the big red subscribe button that's underneath this video player. And there's also a little bell icon that you can click in order to be notified immediately after one of my videos comes out. In the description of this video, you're also going to find the links to my multiple social media accounts, specifically Twitter, where I'm most active at. I highly encourage you to go follow me there. And also in the description, there's a link to the full playlist in case you might have missed an episode. Talking about episodes, in the next one, we're probably going to continue the work of the international sector. There's quite a bit of work to do there, so stay tuned for that. But yeah, that's it. That's all that I have to say for now. I want to thank you all for watching and hope to see you in the next one.